In 2012 in London, Michael Phelps won his 19th Olympic medal, becoming the most decorated Olympian of all time. Phelps has become a staple in the Summer Olympics, and the whole world has watched him progress from his first games at age 15 to his final games 16 years later. The Olympic Games are generally seen as an event that unites the world, even if for only a few weeks every 2 years. According to the Olympic Charter, blending sport with culture and education, Olympism seeks to create a way of life based on the joy found in effort, the educational value of good example, and respect for universal fundamental ethical principles. People all over the world tune into the Olympics to watch their favorite sport or athlete, or even just the opening ceremony. It is no wonder, then, that cities all over the world strive to host the Olympics, spending millions of dollars on the bidding process alone. Unfortunately, however, the Olympics are not always as shiny and perfect as they are expected to be, and what the public sees on television is not always representative of what occurs before and especially after those few weeks are over. Today, I will first talk about why cities want to host the Olympic Games. I will then examine what positive impacts the Olympics have actually had on host cities, followed by some negative impacts that they can also have. I will then talk about the implications that these positive and negative impacts have on the future of the Olympic Games and its current bidding process. There are many reasons that cities choose to place a bid to host the Olympics, the most prevalent being the general international attention that comes with being an Olympic host. Countries that are not often seen in the international light are given the chance to present themselves to the world, and most use this as an opportunity to paint a calculated picture of themselves, which is shown most obviously in the opening ceremony. Some countries even take this opportunity to make political statements concerning their country. An extreme example of this is the 1936 Games in Berlin, Germany, which were basically used as a massive propaganda movement for Nazism. Cities also desire to host the Olympics to help further develop a developing country, especially one that is experiencing political or economic turmoil. A recent example of this is the Rio 2016 Games, which were expected to aid Brazil's urban development and decrease poverty in Rio. Finally, one of the most cited reasons for hosting the Olympics is the expected increase in tourism. Many cities believe that hosting will cause giant leaps in tourism both during the Olympics and afterwards, causing an increase in tourism revenue for the city. Historically, hosting the Olympics has been seen as a great honor because of all of these reasons. Now let's look at how realistic these expectations are by examining some positive impacts the Olympics have had on host cities. Fortunately, there is occasionally an Olympic Games that produces exactly the benefits that the host cities expect. Tourism increases, the city is seen in its best light, and the Games are overall profitable. This has been true in Los Angeles twice, first in 1932 and then in 1984. Now, as LA looks ahead to the 2028 Games, the city believes that it has the pre-existing infrastructure to be profitable again, a feat that is not easy for an Olympic Games. In addition, the Olympics often provide infrastructure improvements for cities that really need it. Renovating streets, improving or constructing public transportation systems, and building new housing structures can all be beneficial for host cities if they continue to be utilized after the Olympics are over. According to Jeff Wallenfeld of Encyclopedia Britannica, 83% of expenditures for the 1992 Barcelona Games were for urban improvement, while only 17% were exclusively for sports. Similar statistics are seen in other host cities as well. Unfortunately, positive Olympic outcomes like these are not always guaranteed and are uncommon. Now let's examine some negative impacts that the Olympics are likely to have on their host cities. One of the most impactful effects of the Olympics on host cities is the debt the Games cause, as they almost always go over budget, often because they have to be expedited because they are behind schedule. The 2004 Games in Greece cost approximately 7 billion euros in taxpayer debt. According to Mike Pearl of Vice, the Olympics are regarded by some as a major contributor to Greece's ongoing economic crisis. Montreal befell a similar fate after the 1976 Olympics, and even China was left in debt after Beijing 2008. Another major concern surrounding the Olympics is that the Games almost always have at least some levels of gentrification and desolation during the construction of and following the completion of the Games. New buildings and arenas for the Olympic Park often cause displacement of the poorest people in the city, with no other place for them to go. This occurred as a result of the Rio Games, but it also occurred in Atlanta in 1996 and in East London in 2012. There's a trend of destroying whole neighborhoods, public housing, or low-income housing in both developed and developing countries to make room for athlete housing or new facilities. Following the games, cities have legacy plans in place to convert the newly constructed stadiums or housing into something usable for the city. Unfortunately, this often does not happen, and the buildings become what are known as white elephants, or buildings and arenas that just sit there empty. Essentially, thousands of people are displaced from their homes for a building to be used for a couple of weeks and then to never be used again. This is especially true in developing countries, which is understandable. The International Olympic Committee points out that it is difficult for a country to implement legacy plans as a first priority when the basic needs of the population need to be urgently addressed. So, after examining both positive and negative impacts the Games have had on host cities, what does this mean for the future of the Olympic bidding process as it is now? Some citizens and government officials are already realizing that the Olympics might not be so great for their cities. Boston, Massachusetts recently won the Olympic bid over Los Angeles, but a grassroots campaign revealed that Bostonians don't want the Olympics in their city. As a result, Mayor Marty Walsh pulled out of the bidding process. However, some cities still believe they can make it work, which is why LA ultimately won their bid for 2028. However, most of the reason LA thinks it can be so successful is because it has infrastructure and knowledge from hosting the Olympics twice already. So, does this mean that there should only be one Olympic location, and should it be LA? This is something for world leaders and the International Olympic Committee to consider going forward. Many experts are suggesting picking one international zone for the Olympics to be every time. John Stewart, a professor at the University of Maryland, suggests an uninhabited island in Greece. This would help Greece's economy and bring the games back to their birthplace without displacing anybody. Because the Olympics are so important to international entertainment, it is clear that they will continue to be held for many years to come. The question is whether the games will or should continue to move from city to city. Today, I hope you have learned about some positive impacts the Olympics have had on host cities, and perhaps been exposed to some negative impacts they had as well. Boston showed the world how much of an impact citizens can have on the Olympic Games, so I hope you are able to use the information I have provided to formulate an opinion about where the Olympics should be in the future, and take action if you feel it is necessary.